What's up guys, I'm Sean. Today I'm going to be overhauling the brakes on my 3rd gen Toyota Tacoma. Stock brakes on a stock truck is okay, but my truck is about 600 to 700 pounds heavier with the rock sliders, metal skid plates, front winch, other accessories. But the 35s are a lot heavier. They're about 20 pounds heavier than stock. So the stock brakes don't really work well with my truck that has 35s. So today I'm going to be replacing the drum brakes in the rear with this. I'm going with the rear disc brake conversion with the option for parking brake from S.O.S Performance. So if you go to their website, you can customize the rear disc brake conversion with or without parking brake, with plain blank rotors, or slotted or cross-drilled and slotted. You can even go with red or black or silver calipers. So this is the kit I'm going with from S.O.S Performance. Drum brakes are old technology. The reason why you still see them is because of cost. Most modern cars come with rear disc brakes. Even the 2024 Tacoma comes with rear disc brakes. The problem with drum brakes is that it's an enclosed system, which is not good for heat. Also, because it's enclosed, the brake dust from the pads can get trapped in here, as well as water, mud, snow, etc. Whereas disc brakes are better in the wet and dry, and has better heat dissipation and better clamping force. It's easier to maintain because you can actually look at the pads and the rotors versus the drum brakes. Alright, with the truck safely on jack stands, the parking brake is down. Wiggle this off or hit it with a mallet and this thing will slide off. If you have troubles, you can put a bolt right here and it's going to force this out. Because I did this recently, it's not too bad. So you can see the brake dust right there. The way the drum brake works is when you step on the brake pedal, the hydraulic fluid goes in here and pushes the piston out, and this pad forces outward to slow down the truck. But when you have disc brakes, it's just going to clamp it. So from a leverage point of view, the further you are away, the easier it is. So that's one example of the advantage of a disc brake. So now we have to remove all of this stuff so we can remove the backing plate. Needle nose pliers. Off the spring. Just remove all the springs. Push this in and turn it. This has a slot. The same for this one. It has a little slot, so we're going to push it in and turn it. Unhook the e-brake cable. We're going to get ready to loosen the brake hard line, where it's going to get really messy. But before we do that, I'm going to loosen the 12mm right here, and back there for the hard line, just have a little bit more play. And the hard line is a 10mm. I'm using a flare wrench. Brake hard line capped off. I'm going to remove the ABS sensor. You just slide a small screwdriver in here or a little pin, and this ABS sensor should slide off. Now we're going to remove the 14mm nuts right here. Following the instructions from S.O.S Performance, I'm going to have to remove the studs with a hammer. So I'm going to knock these studs out. And then I have two options for the backing plate. Option A is just to cut the backing plate off in 2 spots to remove it. Option B is to take the backing plate and the whole axle to a shop to press out the bearing. But the problem with that is I have to take it to a shop, and then also I have to buy a new wheel bearing, but my truck is pretty new still. So I'm not going to go with option B, I'm going to go with option A. They don't take too much force to remove. Just got to hold the axle in place while I hammer it out. I removed the 3 studs all around. The last stud right here is hard to get to because the rear shock is in the way. but I'm going to loosen this, remove this 10mm for the brake line, pull the brake line out of the way. So I'm going to pull this out a little bit, hammer it out, slide it back in, otherwise you're going to lose diff fluid. Now you can see the backing plate is loose. Now we just have to cut it off. Alright, I have on eyes, face, ear, hand protection, 4-inch cutting wheel. And I'm going to cut it in 2 spots, here and here, so I can pull off this backing plate. Yeah, cut it in multiple chunks, cut as far as you can, and then pry it up. Now I'm going to clock the ABS sensor right here on the front side to make room for the brake caliper. So all you have to do is pull this out, clock it forward, and slide it back in. Now the ABS wire, we just have to unclip it and move it so it can reach the connector right here. Now we're going to put the S.O.S Performance kit together. This is the passenger side. It says it, passenger side. Inside parking brake, drum brake. This is the bracket for the passenger side. Slide it into this pin right here. It's a little U bracket. I'm going to slide this on here. Alright, that holds the parking brake. When you pull it, it's going to do that. The kit comes with this exploded view to see where all the parts and pieces goes. So then now I have this little pin that's curved with a little washer. Slide that to the back here. For opening that's not threaded. Brake shoe. And then this piece right here with a little hook goes through there and into the hole right there. Yellow spring top, and then this washer is slotted, so you have to push it down and turn it slightly, then it'll hook on. There's a special tool for it, but I don't have that, so I'm going to use pliers. Push down, clock it. Now we're going to install this on the truck using 3 bolts for now with the lock washer. Use my hand and pull the parking brake slightly, slide it. Install the 3 bolts here, here, and there. Make sure the hub is flush. The backing plate sits flush. It's a 17mm bolt. I'm going to torque it down later. What's critical about the bolt that goes here behind the parking brake shoe, make sure that the bolt doesn't extend and hit the parking brake lever inside. See that? You see the thread barely. So mine has clearance. See the lever moves freely. Alright, for now I'm going to slide the parking brake into its position. I could reuse these OEM nuts, but the kit did come with some bolts. Now we're going to hook up the parking brake cable. If you look at the diagram, slide the spring back. I can slide the cable over, but I have to put it into the parking brake. I removed the 2 10mm bolts to give it a little bit more slack. It's hard to see, but I got the cable on the e-brake. So now let's put on the remaining parking brake. I'm going to line up the brake pad shoe to this area right here. Straight pin for washer. To the hole in the middle. This spring and washer is definitely harder on this side. I moved it out a little bit, put a finger back here, and got it from this side. Make sure that top washer is perpendicular to the opening so it doesn't pop out. Alright, this is the parking brake strut. The spring goes towards the front of the truck. This fatter side The longer ear touches the drum brake. This side touches the inside lever for the parking brake. Ears in there. I'm going to have to try to slide this into place. See, it's all lined up. Alright, now we're going to install the spring. It's going to hook into that part of the shoe to hook onto here. With a little hook tool. That helped. That's hooked up. Now I'm going to do the other spring. There's a green and a black spring. Not sure what the difference is. Yeah. Black spring is on, green spring is on. Everything's lined up here. Use the lithium grease and put a dab on where the green section is. Some of the springs, some of the different places. Now I saw the parking brake adjuster. Threaded part faces the rear. The little stub faces the front. And it goes in the inside. Sit on the inside like that. I'm going to install the orange spring. There's a tab right there. A little hook right there. And then there's Alright, I put some lithium grease on some of the moving parts in the inside, on the spring and on the adjuster. And S.O.S recommends where the pads touch the backing plate, just put a little bit, but make sure nothing gets on the brake pads. So I'm going to clean the parking brake pads, and then I'm going to clean the inside of the rotor with some brake clean. So the inside pads are clean. Inside of the rotor is clean. We'll slide on the rotor. Now I'm going to adjust the parking brake so the shoes touch the pads but without friction. So let's go up. So there's definitely friction. Let's go back down on the adjuster. Back it out a little bit. 2, 3. No friction. Not a play. Let me go up. Make it tighter. Oh, it's too tight, see that? So adjusting the parking brake is going to be trial and error. Back it down one. Alright, should be good right there. I'm going to reinstall the filler plate and the 17mm bolt and torque it to 36 foot-pounds. There's a hole right here in the bottom of the filler plate for an adjustment, and again the parking brake is going to be trial and error, adjusting from back here and also from the center console. Alright, now I'm going to install the caliper. Slide it into place. Install the hardware that came with the kit. I'm going to torque these two bolts to 40 foot-pounds. Alright, so I removed the nut and washer on this bracket and install this bracket right here, and this is going to be for the brake hard line. We'll tighten this up later. So we're going to remove the cap right here, and this is the stainless steel hose that comes with the kit. This one says R for the right side, which is the passenger side. Banjo bolt with a copper washer. It's going to go through here, and then the copper washer on the other side of the bolt. Then we're going to install it down here. I'm not going to tighten that yet. Slide through like this. We're going to slide this clip to hold the brake line. But before I install that, we have to gently bend the hard line to almost a 90 to meet this, but make sure it's not kinked. So I already loosened the two bolts holding the hard line, and the hard line has a little bit of play. Alright, I loosened all the 12mm bolts holding the brake hard line all across the solid axle, so that way the whole thing has a little bit of play. So now I was able to massage it and bend the hard brake line all the way to this bracket. Tap the metal clip that holds the stainless steel line into the bracket. You can see right here. So now we have to install the hard line, and then I'm going to tighten up this bracket. Use a 10mm flare nut wrench to tighten this. It doesn't have to be that tight. It's maybe like 8 foot-pounds, which is basically hand tight. Line everything up, and I'm going to tighten this banjo bolt because it's leaking from the banjo bolt right here now. Alright, tighten down the banjo bolt to about 20 foot-pounds, which is just pretty much snug. Don't over tighten it. Now I'm just going to tighten down the bolt holding the bracket right down here. Remove the sliding caliper bolts to 17mm. And before I install the brake pads, I'm going to clean the outside of the rotor one more time. I'm going to spray the back side of the rotor as well. Remove the caliper out of the way. Install the 4 metal clips that came with the rear brake pads. One in there, in here, and in here. Make sure it sits like that, and make sure it doesn't touch the rotor. Changing the brake pads and rotors is the same as an FJ Cruiser or a Toyota 4Runner. Now I'm going to put a little bit of brake pad anti-seize on the ears of this and there. Torque the caliper sliding bolts to 65 foot-pounds. The passenger side is done. This is how I bent the OEM hard line. Connects to the stainless steel line here. Make sure the stainless steel line goes into that groove in the caliper. And then I zip tie the ABS wire right here. So now all we have to do is the driver's side. The driver's side is done. Very similar to the passenger side, except that we didn't have to clock the ABS sensor forward because it's already forward. But otherwise, the hard line, I bent it. The stainless steel line goes into that groove right here. All that's left to do is to bleed the brakes, but I'm not going to show you how to do that. I already did that in another video when I added these Yoda Mafia extended brake lines. So after I bleed the brakes, I'm going to slap on the wheels. The wheels spin freely. If it doesn't spin freely, that means your parking brake is too tight. So my wheels are 17 by 8.5, so plenty of clearance. S.O.S says this disc brake kit should fit 16-inch wheels and up. Here's the passenger side. The wheel spins freely. Now before we go on a test drive, we have to adjust the emergency parking brake because this thing goes way up, but it doesn't do anything at all. So to remove this center console, you push down on this and untwist your shift knob. 2 10mm bolts right there. And then I just grabbed it from here and just pulled it up, and the whole thing kind of shakes, comes up. Lift the center console up, so then you have easy access to that 12mm nut that tightens the parking brake cable. Handle down, tighten this up. I tightened that nut as far as it can go. The e-brake is definitely more snug than it was before. So now with the engine on, put it in neutral, pull up the e-brake. I'm halfway in the garage and halfway on my driveway, and my driveway is sloped. See if it rolls back. It rolls back slowly. Oh, perfect. It doesn't move at all now. So everything's put back together. The difference between the disc brakes and the OEM drum brakes is that the drum brakes are a lot bigger, so the parking brake was bigger. But now in this setup, the parking brake was a lot smaller and it sits inside the disc rotor, which you've seen during the installation. So therefore it's not going to hold as well as the OEM drum brake, but the parking brake still holds. I just have to pull the handle a lot higher, and it holds in neutral, which is perfect, so none of that pressure is on my transmission. Now I can finally go for a test drive. Alright guys, that's a wrap. Just came back from a test drive, and the rear disc brakes are a night and day difference compared to the previous drum brakes. Before, the truck felt like a front bias 70-30. Now it feels like a 50-50 brake bias. The back end just squats down and brakes. Don't quote me on the brake bias, that's just an example. But the rear disc brakes definitely grabs harder than before. The one thing I would recommend is upgrading the front brake pads and lines as well, because the stock front just doesn't cut it. I'll be installing this in my next video. Hawk LTS brake pads with Yoda Mafia stainless steel lines. These brake pads from Hawk, they're supposed to grab 20 to 40% harder than the OEM pads. If you're running bigger tires or have a lot of weight on your truck, I highly recommend doing the rear disc conversion, as well as upgrading the front pads and lines. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.